Next on Currents News, the NYPD on full alert in the wake of the deadly U.S. airstrike in Baghdad that killed a top Iranian general. A life and death standoff in Texas after a judge sides with a hospital to take a baby girl off life support. Why some are saying President Trump shouldn't hold a campaign rally at a megachurch in Florida. And traveling with Mark Twain, the new exhibit about his trip to the Holy Land. The news starts right now.
The world's a much safer place today. And I can assure you that Americans in the region are much safer today after the demise of Qasem Soleimani.
Good evening, I'm Emily Druby. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo says the strike that killed the Iranian general will de-escalate tensions in the Middle East by delivering a stark warning about U.S. resolve. But Iran is vowing to retaliate, and now thousands of U.S. troops are being deployed to the region. Camila Burnell reports.
Escalating tensions in the Middle East and in the U.S. after the targeted killing of Iran's top security and intelligence commander.
No man alive was more directly responsible for the deaths of more American service members than Qasem Soleimani.
According to the Pentagon, President Donald Trump ordered the airstrike that killed Qasem Soleimani and an Iraqi leader.
President Trump's decision to remove Qasem Soleimani from the battlefield saved American lives.
On Capitol Hill, lawmakers agreeing on what Soleimani did, but reacting along party lines.
The president's decision may add to an already dangerous and difficult situation in the Middle East.
I think it was the right move.
But in Iran, Soleimani was seen as a national hero, and officials vowing revenge, saying, quote, America will not find an easy escape from being held to account for this miscalculation. The U.S. will now deploy thousands of additional troops to the Middle East, and Secretary Pompeo assuring Americans the U.S. is prepared for any possible response from Iran. Meanwhile, major U.S. cities like New York, Los Angeles, and Washington also preparing.
We do this because what happens in Baghdad, what happens in Tehran, what happens in Tel Aviv, London, or France can and does affect us here in America.
Camila Burnell, Currents News.
Mayor Bill de Blasio also addressed New Yorkers today in the wake of that airstrike that killed that top Iranian general. He's promising the NYPD is on alert and is beefing up security.
We are now potentially facing a threat that's different and greater than anything we have faced previously.
You know what's normal on your block, in your business, if you're a night watchman, if you're somebody on your block. When that hair goes up on the back of your head that something feels out of the ordinary, you're right.
Top NYPD Brass Commissioner Shea says it's up to all New Yorkers to stay vigilant, though there are no specific credible threats to the city at this time. The State Department issued its highest alert, warning Americans not to travel to Iraq. It says U.S. citizens are at high risk for violence and kidnapping, and numerous terrorist and insurgent groups are active in the country. Following violent protests that damaged the embassy in Baghdad, it is now closed until further notice. Concerns that Iran might retaliate against the U.S. is spiking the price of oil. Experts warn that Tehran could disrupt global supplies of energy from the Mideast. If that happens, the sustained rise in oil prices could lead to more expensive gas prices at the pump, and home heating fuel cost would go up. The new year is also featuring a new propaganda video out of North Korea. The Supreme Leader on a white stallion. Bold strokes of bravado complete with sound effects of the horse's gallop. The video comes with threats that his country will no longer stop testing long-range missiles. Instead, Kim Jong-un says the world will witness a new weapon in the near future.
Many of us are expecting some kind of ICBM launch. Whether it's an existing missile that they have, or a variant, or perhaps even a new ICBM like solid fuel. They could do additional submarine launches, they could do land-based medium range, they could do intermediate range missiles.
Bruce Klinger, a former CIA analyst, believes that if Kim does indeed test a new missile soon, the United States should no longer use restraint. The man charged in the machete attack at a Hanukkah celebration was also questioned in the stabbing of an Orthodox Jew in November. Local authorities in Rockland County spoke with Grafton Thomas about a November 20th attack that critically injured a man as he walked to a synagogue. Thomas is facing state and federal charges in the rampage at a rabbi's home in Muncie that injured 5 people. So far, investigators have not tied Thomas to the earlier stabbing. The 13-year-old accused in the murder of Bernard College freshman Tessa James will stay locked up while awaiting trial. A Manhattan family court judge ordered Zaire Davis to remain behind bars, citing the seriousness of the charges. His attorneys had asked that he be released into the custody of his aunt and uncle. A trial date is set for mid-March. For the first time, U.S. Customs and Border Protection are sending migrants seeking asylum in Arizona back to Mexico to await court hearings. The move is an expansion of a program called Remain in Mexico, which the U.S. adopted to deal with a surge of Central American migrants at the southern border. About 30 asylum seekers were sent back to Mexico because of the program on Thursday morning. Leaders of the United Methodist Church announced a plan to formally split after years of division over same-sex marriage. Under the plan, the second largest Protestant denomination with 13 million members worldwide will form a new traditionalist Methodist denomination that would ban same-sex marriage as well as the ordination of gay and lesbian clergy. The agreement is expected to be approved at a conference in May. President Donald Trump is currently in Florida campaigning to win the vote of evangelical Christians. Tonight's event is being held at a megachurch, but some legal experts are saying the event may violate IRS regulations. Amber Diaz has the story.
Amid impeachment backlash and a looming trial, President Donald Trump is headed to a Florida megachurch in hopes of gaining support for a 2020 re-election. The Evangelicals for Trump event, hosted at King Jesus International Ministry, will round up evangelical supporters from across the nation. But a nonprofit group says the church is knowingly going against IRS rules by hosting the event inside its walls. According to 501c of IRS regulations, a church is tax exempt provided they, quote, not participate in any campaign activity for or against political candidates. Rebecca MARKERT, legal director of the Freedom from Religion Foundation, explains.
We received a report that the pastor of King Jesus Ministry Church encouraged his congregants to attend a political rally that was organized by the Trump campaign. That is a violation of the IRS regulations, which prohibit churches and other nonprofit organizations from engaging in political campaigns.
This is video from inside the church 4 days after Christmas. Pastor Guillermo Maldonado heard persuading church members to side with President Trump.
Es el único presidente.
It's been the only president that has opened his heart to listen to the pastors.
De lo que él haga.
The decision of what he does is not mine, but at least we can talk, we can pray, we can influence, and after everything, the blessing comes to the people. MARKERT says that crosses the lines between church and state.
That really shows to the congregants that he's supportive of the Trump campaign. And if he was true about being nonpartisan, then we would expect he would then invite the soon-to-be-known Democratic candidate to come and speak at his church later this year.
That was Amber Diaz reporting. The church responded by saying they are not endorsing a political candidate or engaging in any political campaigns. Trump's election campaign organized and paid for the event. The church only leased the space to them. Meanwhile, Governor Cuomo headed to church at the World Trade Center yesterday.
Your Eminence, what a pleasure. Governor, welcome.
The governor greeting the new head of the Greek Orthodox Church in America at St. Nicholas Church and National Shrine, which had been destroyed on September 11th. Governor Cuomo announced construction on the House of Worship will resume at the end of January. The Archbishop promises the project will be completed by 2021, the 20th anniversary of the attacks. Pope Francis made history in 2019, traveling to nearly a dozen countries in all corners of the globe, bringing peace to the peripheries. Some of the highlights include celebrating the first papal mass on the Arabian Peninsula and hosting a summit with leaders of the Amazon. No surprise, he's not slowing down come 2020. Currents News' Michelle Powers reports the Holy Father has a busy year on the horizon.
Come the new year, the Holy Father has his eyes set on visiting several different countries, including one that would make him the first pope to ever touch down in the nation. That's Montenegro. Pope Francis will come on the heels of the country passing a religious freedom law that has sparked protests across the Balkan Republic. On that journey, Francis will also likely visit the island of Cyprus. The country hasn't hosted a pope since 2010. During several general audiences, Francis has expressed his desire to visit two other countries struggling with war, Iraq and South Sudan.
Seguo con preoccupazione la situazione in Iraq. Prego per i defunti e per i feriti. Sono vicino ai loro familiari e all'intero popolo iracheno.
Last year, Pope Francis made headlines when he kissed the feet of two opposing South Sudanese leaders at the Vatican. He promised he'd visit the country so long as the new government is honoring the peace agreement.
Con il ricordo ancora vivo del ritiro spirituale per le autorità del Paese svoltosi in Vaticano nell'aprile scorso, desidero rinnovare il mio invito a tutti gli attori del processo politico nazionale a cercare ciò che unisce e a superare ciò che divide.
The Holy Father was also invited to Hungary, where there's a chance he will beatify a cardinal who was imprisoned in the 1950s for speaking against the communist regime. There could also be trips to Indonesia and Papua New Guinea on the horizon. Either way, 2020 is bound to be another busy year for Pope Francis. Michelle Powers, Currents News.
There's a lot more news headed your way. Honoring Mother Cabrini was a hot topic in 2019. Bishop DiMarzio is here with that and all the stories we'll keep talking about in the new year. A Texas family is fighting for the life of their 11-month-old girl after a court agrees with doctors to take her off life support. And seeing the Holy Land through the eyes of author Mark Twain. Do you have a story idea or want to share a tip? Email us at newstips@desalesmedia.org or call our 24-hour number 718-517-3122. We'll be right back. In Texas, a family is fighting for the life of their 11-month-old girl after a judge sided with a hospital to take her off life support. Tinsley Lewis has been hospitalized since her premature birth in February. The hospital says she's suffering, but as Tamara Lane reports, her family and their many supporters are not giving up hope.
We're just hoping to save her life.
Tinsley Lewis has never been outside the walls of Cook Children's. She was born in February with a rare heart defect and has been on a ventilator since July. The medical team at Cook Children's says it's done everything they can for her, but she will never get better.
Just changing her diapers, turning her over so that she doesn't develop bed sores. All the things we have to do to keep her alive and keep her better or keep her well is causing her pain and causing her suffering, and we don't want to do that any longer.
An ethics committee at the hospital determined her life support should be removed. Tinsley's family has been fighting the hospital's decision in court since they got the notice at the end of October, something Pope Francis has always advocated for. Last May, tweeting, "We pray for those who live with severe illness. Let us always safeguard life, God's gift, from its beginning until its natural end. Let us not give in to a throwaway culture."
I can't imagine how difficult it is for Trinity, not just the unknown of her child in her current condition, but the weight and stress of the legal battle that is going on for her child's life right now. It is, I'm sure, incredibly difficult.
A judge denied the family's request for a temporary injunction today, giving the hospital the green light to withdraw treatment. A judgment that goes against church teaching. Last April, at a General Assembly, Pope Francis reaffirmed, "I would like to reiterate and strongly confirm that the only master of life from its beginning to its natural end is God. Our duty is to do everything to protect life." Tinsley's mother says, "I am heartbroken over today's decision because the judge basically said Tinsley's life is not worth living." Attorneys for the family have already filed an appeal.
Tinsley deserves to live. She deserves more time.
We will continue to give Tinsley the care that we have always given her for as long as this goes on.
Tamara Lane, Currents News.
Prospective parents through surrogacy here in New York could soon have to enter paid contracts. That's because of a proposal Governor Cuomo says will be part of his 2020 State of the State agenda. A similar bill went before legislature in New York last year, but never came up for a vote in the Assembly. The Catholic Church is against such surrogacy contracts. The New York State Catholic Conference also arguing they have been used to exploit surrogates around the world. Authorities are sending a word of warning tonight in this new year. Don't abbreviate 2020 when signing documents. Officials say dating documents or checks with only 20 could make it easy for scammers to change the year. They then can use that method to establish an unpaid debt or attempt to cash an old check. Instead, they advise you take the time to write out the full year 2020. From 2020 all the way back to 1867, a new exhibit chronicles Mark Twain's famous trip to the Holy Land, which inspired one of his most famous works. We have a look at the original documents, artwork, and artifacts. Treasures from famed author Mark Twain's 1867 trip to the Holy Land, the voyage that inspired his book, The Innocents Abroad.
It was, in Twain's lifetime, his best-selling publication ever.
Michael Ryan curated the New York Historical Society exhibition.
It's amazing what survived from this trip.
Artifacts telling the story of that influential trip, from steamer tickets to a camera they used to costumes brought back by Twain. The nearly half-year journey took Twain through Europe, Egypt, Syria, Lebanon, and Palestine. It gave him a deeper appreciation for the Bible, but left him with cynical views of the Holy Land, very different from the world's accepted views at the time.
The received image of the Holy Land in the 19th century was a dreamy, romantic one.
Twain shared his alternative view with the world.
Twain encounters not the Holy Land of the travel books. He encounters the Holy Land as for what it was, which was a barren outback of the Ottoman Empire. There was nothing grand about it. There was nothing magnificent or dreamy or romantic about it. It was pretty miserable.
At the time, Twain was known for his satiric writing, but Ryan says coming from a devout Christian family, he knew where to draw the line, adding while he gave a realistic view of the Holy Land, he wasn't crude towards religion. The exhibit coincides with the 150th anniversary of the book's publication and will be on display until February 2nd, 2020. Still to come on Current News, impeachment dominated the headlines in 2019. Bishop DiMarzio shares his thoughts on the stories that will keep us talking through 2020. And the bundle of joy that couldn't wait to arrive, making his debut in a church parking lot. And please check out one of the latest features in the tablet, the Our Diocesan Family page. That's where you can send in photos of your family receiving certain sacraments, such as baptism, First Communion, confirmation, and marriage. For more information and to submit your pictures, go to thetablet.org/OurDiocesanFamily. We'll be right back. As we celebrate this new year and new decade, the Bishop of Brooklyn, Nicholas DiMarzio, sits down with Ed Wilkinson to review the big stories of 2019, some of which we'll still be talking about in 2020. Ed?
Thank you, and Bishop DiMarzio is here with us today as we turn the year from 2019 to 2020, Bishop. And boy, this decade seemed to go by like a shot. How about you?
10 years,
yeah,
fast.
Unbelievable. What would you say that this year were the most significant stories, say strictly on a secular basis in the world out there? What do you think was the most dramatic story of the year?
Well, a lot of it's centered around the president, the impeachment process. This is something people will remember. How, if it's successful or not is another issue, but just that the fact that the divisions in the country are so accentuated because of how things happen here, that there seems to be two armed camps, two parties that can't agree on anything. So it's a rather difficult time for our country.
Yeah. How are we ever going to get beyond that, Bishop? I mean, of course we can pray, but what kind of practical things can we do to try to get beyond these divisions in the country?
Well, I think we have to return to real politics. Politics is the art of the possible. It's the art of compromise. And it seems to have been forgotten that one side wants to win whatever they think is correct and without considering the other side of the equation. This is the only way a democratic society like our own can survive. If you have a dictator, the dictator does what he wants, but that's not the case. And we've got to learn that the real politic that makes our democracy what it is. Learn it again.
Yeah. Also within the church, there's been a lot of changes. And some people saying that there's a lot of divisions within the church right now between liberals and conservatives, and they blame it on the Pope because he's trying to make a lot. You know, he's at the top, so he's going to get blamed. How do you feel about it?
I don't see it. I mean, I think there's always been differences of opinion within the church. Nobody thinks everything the same way. So, but to blame it on the Pope is, I think, a mistake. He seems to be as even-handed as anyone else has ever been as Pope, trying to bring the church together, trying to lead it. I don't think he's certainly the cause of any of the difference of opinions, but people attribute to him because he seems to say things that are not clear for some people. They would like them to be more definite. But that's, again, he's trying to engage everyone, how he presents things. He doesn't force the issue. He tries to present it so people can follow his leadership.
Do you think he's putting a different emphasis on some of the...
Definitely, yeah, sure.
Yeah. How about the Mother Cabrini statue? That was a big controversy this year.
Yes, it was. Well, again, not to get away from the politics of it, it looks like we will have a Mother Cabrini statue being done, the recognition that she was a woman who helped build New York. That was the whole point of why they wanted more statues of women in the city, that there wasn't enough. So she certainly was somebody that deserved that honor, among other people. But and again, the political situation, how it happened, she looked like she was slighted because there was more votes for her when they asked for some public opinion, and they ignored it, and maybe were putting it off, and then you have people who were angry, and these are the way things happen.
Yeah. Well, so something to look forward to. Bishop, thanks so much.
Thank you.
And Happy New Year to you. And we're going back to the news desk as we wish all our viewers a Happy New Year.
Thank you, Ed and Bishop DiMarzio, and a Happy New Year to you both as well. Finally tonight, the story of a healthy baby boy who made a dramatic entrance into 2020. A firefighter rushed to help a woman deliver a baby New Year's Day in a church parking lot in Indiana. The parents pulled over when they realized they weren't going to make it to the hospital.
I was physically shaking. Like it was a rush, and it was the scariest thing I've ever done in my life. Burning buildings don't give you that feeling.
Firefighter SNEED was sitting down to dinner when he got the emergency call. The baby boy, who doesn't have a name yet, was delivered within 90 seconds. That is very fast. And now that is Currents News. I'm Emily Drewby. Thank you for joining us because we are putting your faith in the news. Hope to see you again next time.